Welcome back to the deep dive, where we don't just scratch the surface, we really plunge right into the heart of history's most, well, captivating mysteries. We try to pull back the curtain on those unseen forces, the tiny details that really shape how we understand things.
Absolutely.
Tonight, we're not just looking at a cold case, we're sort of stepping into this unseen vortex. Imagine this swirling chaos of dark, rain-swept skies over the Pacific Northwest. Think about that night, a powerful Boeing 727 jet slicing through a desolate November evening. And on board, a man who's about to make history, not by, doing something big, but by simply vanishing into legend.
Right. And it wasn't just any crime, was it? It felt like an act of audacious precision, a breathtaking gamble against, well, everything. The weather, the law, the whole idea of being caught.
Exactly. It's a story that has, gripped investigators, the public, really everyone, for decades now. A true American enigma.
And what truly defines this case, I think, is how that single daring event, carried out with such meticulous planning, didn't just force a whole rethink of aviation security worldwide.
Right. Huge changes came from it.
Huge changes. But it also just utterly captivated the imagination of an entire nation. It instantly became more than a crime. It turned into, a national riddle, a whisper of defiance, of disappearance that's just echoed for, half a century now?
Yeah, easily.
The sheer audacity, the nerve of it all that cemented its place in folklore almost straight away. It fueled countless theories, this insatiable public curiosity. It really does have all the ingredients of a great thriller, doesn't it?
It does. A daring plan, a clean getaway.
And absolutely no resolution. Still.
We are, of course, talking about the enduring mystery of the D.B. Cooper hijacking. The date specifically was November 24th, 1971.
A date etched in history.
An unassuming man, described as calm, collected, boards this Northwest Orient Airlines Boeing 727. Claims he has a bomb. Coolly extorts $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes.
4 parachutes. That detail always gets me.
And then, mid-flight, as the plane's flying over this churning landscape, mountains, forests, total darkness, he just steps out into the pitch black night. Disappears, like a ghost in the machine.
And it remains, to this day, the only unsolved hijacking in U.S. history. A truly singular event, still defying resolution. Its incredible allure, I think, comes from that unique blend. Daring crime, unbelievably clean getaway, and this half-century of just unresolved mystery.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate real-life thriller, a story that just refuses to end. And for this deep dive, we've pulled from the most trusted sources we could find, official FBI reports, extensive historical archives.
Right, the case files.
Exactly. And some really cutting-edge scientific research, stuff that's pushing the boundaries of forensic analysis, revealing secrets hidden, in plain sight all this time.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission today is to really dissect the knowns and the unknowns of this incredible, almost unbelievable story. And we're going to introduce you to a fascinating, almost invisible scientific breakthrough that has cast some, truly astounding new light on this decades-old cold case.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
This is a story that, even though the FBI officially closed the active investigation back in, 2016?
That's right, 2016.
It absolutely refuses to stay buried.
Indeed. And we'll explore how microscopic evidence, pioneering forensic analysis, is really challenging these long-held theories, promising to reveal secrets hidden right there decades later. So prepare yourselves for a journey through, meticulous details, some really unexpected turns.
Oh, definitely unexpected.
And just the enduring human fascination with this elusive figure, the man who dared to defy gravity and just disappear into the night. It's a story that proves even the smallest, most overlooked details can hold the biggest, most game-changing answers. It keeps reshaping how we see one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the sheer audacity of Cooper's plan, we need to go back. Back to that crisp, pretty ordinary afternoon, November 24th, 1971.
Just a regular travel day, seemingly.
Right. Flight 305, a routine Northwest Orient Airlines flight, just getting ready for its short hop from Portland, Oregon, up to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, SeaTac.
Yeah.
Among the 96 souls on board, there's this unassuming man, dressed in a dark suit, white shirt, black tie, sitting in seat 18E.
18E, right in the back.
This is the guy who would later become, immortalized as D.B. Cooper, which is funny because that name itself was actually a reporter's mistake, wasn't it?
It was. The alias he used for the ticket was just Dan Cooper. The DB kind of stuck thanks to early media reports mixing things up.
Huh. Anyway, Even in these first moments, these seemingly mundane interactions, Cooper's demeanor was striking.
It really was. Flight attendant Tina Muckler, her observations became absolutely critical, later described him as remarkably calm, composed.
Not nervous at all.
Apparently not. Politely ordered a bourbon and soda, totally at ease, and then he passed her that fateful note. Mucklow, along with the senior flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, they later provided some of the most vital eyewitness accounts, giving the FBI their earliest, most detailed descriptions.
And they both remembered him being calm.
Yeah, his quiet confidence, almost unnerving in its intensity, that was a common thread in what they recalled. He wasn't aggressive, not agitated, just coldly efficient.
So that note, delivered so politely, that was the opening move, wasn't it?
That was it.
His claim, written down, then confirmed verbally, was chillingly simple. He had a bomb. And to really sell the threat, he actually gave Mucklow a quick peek inside his briefcase.
He did. Showed her what he described as 8 red cylinders, lots of wires, a battery, looked like the real deal.
Now, the FBI initially thought maybe dynamite sticks.
Yeah, that was the first thought. But later analysis, especially by military folks familiar with explosives, suggested they were probably highway flares or maybe railroad flares. Still looked terrifying, though.
Oh, absolutely. The visual impact, the implied power. That was enough. The plane was hostage. And his demands, conveyed verbally, then written down by Mucklow, were super precise, non-negotiable.
Exactly. $200,000 in $20 bills, specifically 20s.
And the parachutes, for them. 2 primaries, 2 reserve. He wasn't leaving anything to chance, was he?
Not a thing. And what's really fascinating is how the FBI, right away, saw the tactical brilliance in those demands.
How so?
Well, choosing a bomb, that was clever. In the confined space of a plane, it makes a coordinated rush by passengers or crew incredibly risky. Impossible, maybe. Any sudden move could, trigger disaster. It created this huge psychological barrier.
Right, nobody wants to be the one to set off the bomb.
Exactly. But the demand for 4 parachutes, that was a masterstroke in a different way. If he'd only asked for 1, authorities might have been tempted maybe to give him a faulty one, sabotage it.
Especially if only his life was at risk.
Precisely. But by demanding 4, he strongly implied he might take hostages with him. Made sabotage way too dangerous a gamble for law enforcement. It forced them to provide fully functional parachutes. Removed a critical variable. Showed a clear, sophisticated understanding of psychology and emergency procedures.
Wow. Okay. So while Flight 305 is circling Seattle, the tension on the ground must have been just immense.
Unbelievable, I imagine. Authorities scrambling to get the cash together, 200,000 in 20s, isn't trivial, and find those specific parachutes.
And the negotiations dragged on.
They did, creating this dramatic, agonizing standoff. There were even frustrating delays with refueling. Needed multiple trucks to finally top off the tanks. Every minute must have felt like an hour.
Yeah, for the crew especially.
And yet, despite the high stakes, some really interesting human details came out during that delay. Cooper himself apparently stayed remarkably composed, even made small talk with Tina Mucklow.
Really? What did they talk about?
Well, she apparently asked him innocently why he chose Northwest Orient, and he joked, saying it wasn't because he held a grudge against the airline, but just because I have a grudge.
Really?
And he even offered her a Raleigh cigarette, which seems minor, but it became crucial later. They found 8 filter-tip butts in his ashtray. Tangible evidence.
Wow. But he wasn't totally calm. He got annoyed with the delays.
Yeah, his composure wasn't absolute. He did show irritation, apparently urged the ground crew with a sharp, "Let's get this show on the road." He clearly wanted his plan executed swiftly. No hitches.
Okay, this is where the puzzle really deepens for me. Cooper's knowledge of aviation, it seems almost like insider level.
It really does.
He didn't just pick any plane. He specifically chose a Boeing 727. And for very specific reasons, right? Reasons that tell us a lot about his preparation.
Absolutely. And his demands for the flight plan were just as precise, technically specific. A course towards Mexico City, minimum airspeed approximately 100 knots, maximum altitude 10,000 feet. Landing gear down.
Landing gear down.
Wow. To help keep the speed low and stable. And a 15 degrees flap setting, critically, an unpressurized cabin.
Okay, unpressurized makes sense for jumping.
Right. And they eventually agreed on Reno Tahoe International Airport for a second refueling stop. Every single one of those details had a calculated purpose. It really points to someone with more than just a casual interest in planes.
So why the 7 took on? What was so special about it?
Okay, so the key insight here is why the 727 was basically perfect for his escape. Almost like he'd, studied the blueprints. It's aft the staircase at the very back of the plane.
Yeah, I've seen pictures. Under the tail.
Exactly. It was a feature that could be activated during flight. And crucially, it could not be overridden from the cockpit. Now, most planes then had overrides for key systems, but the 727's aft stair, especially in flight, was a kind of blind spot, a hidden vulnerability.
And regular crews wouldn't know that.
Largely unknown to civilian crews, yeah. Which is why the FBI later wondered if maybe Cooper knew about alleged CIA operations during the Vietnam War, using 727s to drop agents or supplies out the back.
Whoa, okay.
And that demand for 15 degrees flaps. Another highly specific instruction. That exact setting let the plane fly slow and low around 100 knots without stalling, kept it stable. And critically, it kept him out of the cockpit where he could potentially be overpowered.
Smart.
Very smart. First Officer Bill Radizak later noted Cooper, quote, displayed a specific knowledge of flying and aircraft in general, which is pretty chilling given what happened next. This wasn't random. It was a coldly calculated selection, down to the flight parameters.
So the moment of truth arrives. The plane takes off from Seattle, refueled. Tina Mucklow is still on board, this reluctant witness.
To terrify, I'm sure.
Cooper tells her to go join the rest of the crew in the cockpit. Then, moments later, tells them to lower that aft air stair. He meticulously ties the money to himself. He even cut the canopy from one of the reserve chutes.
Yeah, presumably to stash some cash more securely, or maybe just stop it flapping around wildly in the wind.
Right, and then around 8:13 p.m. local time, Cooper steps out into the pitch black night in the rain with a 172 miles per hour wind in his face. It's 1,000 feet up. It's just an unbelievable image.
And the crew in the cockpit, they felt it immediately. Even without seeing him jump, there was this unmistakable upward movement of the tail section and a brief, distinct change in cabin pressure.
Yeah.
Right, at 8:13 p.m., confirmed his exit into that roaring darkness.
Wow.
The sheer audacity of it all, a guy in loafers and a trench coat just disappearing into history, into the wind and rain, that's what makes this case so profoundly captivating, I think. He just vanished, left behind the wind, the plane, and this unparalleled mystery that would baffle investigators for decades. A true ghost in the annals of crime.
Okay, so Cooper jumps, vanishes. What happens next? The investigation must have been immediate, right? Frantic.
Oh, absolutely frantic. A massive undertaking, unlike almost anything they'd dealt with before. FBI agents swarmed that plane the moment it landed safely, which it eventually did in Reno. They meticulously recovered every tiny scrap of evidence Cooper left in seat 18E.
We mentioned the tie, the cigarette butts.
Right. His black clip-on tie, that mother-of-pearl tie clip, a single hair from the headrest, and those 8 Raleigh filter-tipped butts from the ashtray. Every little bit mattered.
And the sketches. They came from the flight attendants.
Exactly. From the eyewitness accounts of Tina Mucklow and Florence Schaffner, they painstakingly developed composite sketches. The first one, Composite A, was apparently so off that agents jokingly called it the Bing Crosby sketch.
Shows how tough eyewitness accounts can be under stress.
Totally. They later refined it to Composite B, and then finally a more detailed, revised Composite B came out in January 2, 1973. That became the iconic image we associate with D.B. Cooper.
And where did they think he landed, initially?
Based on the plane's flight path, the jump time, wind conditions, initial extrapolations put his likely landing zone in this largely forested, really rugged area. On the southernmost edge of Mount St. Helens, a few miles southeast of Ariel, Washington, near Lake Merwin.
So they searched there.
Oh, did they ever. The scale of the search was immense, unprecedented for the time, focused on that dense wilderness in Clark and Cowlitz counties. Hundreds of FBI agents, local police, National Guard troops, volunteers, combing the area.
How did they search?
On foot, battling terrible weather and treacherous terrain, helicopters crisscrossing overhead, patrol boats meticulously scouring Lake Merwin and Yale Lake nearby. A monumental effort.
And they found nothing.
Absolutely nothing. The conclusion was stark, utterly frustrating. Neither Cooper nor any of the equipment he presumably carried was found. No parachute, no money bags, no sign of a body, no trace of his landing, nothing.
Wow.
That complete absence just deepened the mystery, added another impenetrable layer to the enigma. It was like the wilderness just swallowed him whole, left behind only the legend.
So for 9 long years, silence. The case goes cold, just sinks into that frustrating pile of unsolved mysteries.
Right. Leads dried up. Theories went nowhere.
Then, boom, February 10th, 1980. 9 years later, the silence is shattered in the most unexpected way possible.
It really was. An 8-year-old boy, Brian Ingram, he's vacationing with his family along the Columbia River at this beachfront area called Tenabar.
Yeah.
He's just, raking the sandy riverbank, clearing a spot for a campfire, and he uncovers something poking through the wet sand, something that would reignite the entire investigation, change everything.
What did he find? Don't tell me.
It was the money, or some of it. 3 packets of the ransom cash, totaling about $5,800.
No way, after 9 years.
Incredible, right?
Yeah.
The bills were heavily disintegrated, clearly been exposed to the elements for a long time, submerged, buried.
But still recognizable.
Yeah, recognizable enough. And they were still bundled in rubber bands. The bands had mostly crumbled away, but they still held the stacks together, remarkably.
And they confirmed it was the ransom money.
Absolutely. FBI technicians meticulously matched the serial numbers, confirmed they were arranged in the same order as when they were handed over to Cooper. This wasn't just any old cash found on a riverbank. This was the money. A tangible piece of the legend, finally resurfacing.
Tenabar, where exactly is that?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't sound like Mount St. Helens.
Not even close. And that's where the Tenabar find creates this even deeper, more baffling enigma. The money was found about 9 miles downstream from Vancouver, Washington, and 20 miles southwest of Ariel, roughly 30 kilometers from Cooper's supposed jump location near Lake Merwin.
Okay, wait. 30 kilometers away. That's miles.
Miles and miles away, and downstream on a completely different major river system, the Columbia. It just defied all logic at the time. All the previous search efforts, all the theories pointed to a totally different area, much closer to the flight path. As far as anyone could figure, there was no apparent reason for the money to end up there.
So it wasn't just Cooper who vanished. The money trail vanished and reappeared somewhere completely unexpected.
Exactly. It was almost like a second, equally perplexing mystery nested inside the first one. How did that money get to Tenabar?
So what did they think? How could it have gotten there?
Well, the discovery immediately sparked new theories. There was a geologist, Leonard Palmer, who, right around the time of the find, proposed his Washougal washdown theory.
Washougal washdown.
His idea was that the money didn't land directly in the Columbia near Tenabar. Maybe it fell into a smaller stream, a tributary up near Ariel, closer to the jump zone. And then, over many years, it slowly washed its way down that tributary, eventually into the Washougal River, and then finally into the Columbia River upstream of Tenabar, where it eventually settled and got buried.
Plausible, I guess.
Yeah.
Over 9 years.
Plausible, yeah. And the bundles themselves were found just under the sand surface, about 15 meters up from the waterline, a spot that would only really be underwater during floods or high water periods. And the condition of the rubber bands intact but crumbled off, that suggested they were probably buried relatively quickly after their journey, without too much extra exposure once they settled at Tenabar. But even with Palmer's theory, it just raised more complex questions about Cooper's exact landing spot, the money-specific journey, how it stayed bundled, why only that amount was found. It created this whole new complex layer to an already baffling mystery. Proved that even finding evidence could somehow deepen the enigma.
Okay, so for almost another decade, that money found at Tenabar was the only real new lead. Then, years later, the focus shifts again. From something you can hold, like cash, to something you can barely even see.
Right, the microscopic world, which unlocks this whole new chapter.
We're talking about diatoms, which honestly sounds like something out of science fiction. What exactly are diatoms?
Yeah, it does sound a bit sci-fi, but they're very real. They're basically photosynthetic eukaryotic algae. Tiny, single-celled organisms found pretty much everywhere there's water around the world.
Okay.
Algae. But what makes them special, especially for forensics, is their shell. They have this intricate, really robust silica shell called a fristule. Think of it like a tiny, ornate glass house.
Made of silica, like glass.
Exactly. And these fristules, these shells, they have an astonishing story to tell. They carry like a time-stamped record of the environment they lived in. A biological calendar sealed in silica.
Wow. How does that help with forensics?
Well, their most common forensic use is actually in drowning cases. To determine if someone drowned, meaning they inhaled water while alive, or if the body was put in water after death, based on finding specific diatom species deep in the lungs or bone marrow.
Okay. Makes sense.
But their potential goes way beyond that. It's been kind of underutilized in other crime areas. But what makes them super intriguing for a case like D.B. Cooper is their ability to act as these precise environmental timestamps.
Oh.
Crucially, some species, like one called Asterinella formosa, have really significant broad variation in seasonal abundance, meaning there are lots of them at certain times of the year and very few at others.
Oh, like a bloom.
Exactly, like a seasonal bloom. So their presence or absence on an object can powerfully constrain the time of year when an object was immersed in water. And the Columbia River, where the money was found, is perfect for this. It's a major river that's been historically well studied. Agencies have kept meticulous monthly records of diatom species and their abundance for years.
So these tiny things are like microscopic detectives carrying a calendar.
That's a great way to put it, carrying a precise calendar right there in their shells.
Which brings us to this pivotal study. You mentioned cutting-edge research. This sounds like it.
It really was groundbreaking. The paper was titled Diatoms Constrain Forensic Burial Timelines, Case Study with D.B. Cooper Money, published in a top journal, Scientific Reports, back in August 2020.
Okay.
This research applied sophisticated diatom analysis directly to one of the recovered D.B. Cooper bills, treating it not just as evidence of the crime, but as a potential environmental record, a direct witness to its own journey through the water. A totally novel approach to this very cold case.
How do they actually do it? How do you get diatoms off a 50-year-old dollar bill?
Very carefully. The methodology was meticulous, innovative. They got permission to sample a single original Cooper bill, one that Brian Ingram still owned, a unique piece of history.
Wow.
They carefully extracted any diatoms present on its surface and embedded within the fibers. Then, the crucial part,
No.
they rigorously compared the mix of diatom species found on that historical bill to several reference samples.
Like what?
Like modern bills, they deliberately submerged in the Columbia River, some in November to mimic the hijacking time frame, others in March, representing a different season. They also extracted diatoms directly from the sand at Tina Bar, where the money was found, to get a baseline for the burial environment itself.
So comparing the Cooper bill diatoms to known seasonal samples.
Exactly. And to make the findings even stronger, they also did elemental analysis, specifically something called energy dispersive spectroscopy, or EDS.
What does that do?
It checks for trace elements within the diatom shells themselves. Because the elements available in the river water also vary seasonally, so the elemental signature inside the diatoms provides a second independent layer of confirmation about when they were growing.
Okay, so they did the analysis. What did they find? This is the big reveal, right?
This is the big reveal. And the findings were absolutely astounding, completely turned long-held assumptions and, frankly, some beloved theories right on their head.
Get on with it. What did they find?
The Cooper bill, when they looked closely under the microscope, surprisingly contained diatoms from summer bloom species, specifically types like Asterinella and Stephanodiscus.
Summer bloom species.
Yes, and here's the kicker. These specific species are nearly absent in November when the jump occurred. They just aren't around in the river in significant numbers then. Instead, Asterinella, for example, has a very large bloom in early summer, specifically during the months of May and June.
May and June. Not November.
Not November. It was a revelation that fundamentally, unequivocally shifted the timeline. The time the money went into the water wasn't a cold November night. It was a warm summer day, months later.
Whoa. Okay, so what does that mean for the whole D.B. Cooper mystery?
That means a lot. This finding strongly suggests the money was not directly buried dry. And, crucially, the immersion happened months after the late November hijacking. That's a huge distinction.
It puts the money in the water in the summer.
Exactly. And the elemental signatures backed this up powerfully. They showed opposite enrichment of sodium and calcium compared to the samples they soaked in November. Clear indication the diatoms on the Cooper bill grew during a completely different seasonal period than the hijacking. It effectively puts the money in the water during late spring or early summer, not winter. A biologically verified timestamp you just can't ignore.
This isn't just about Cooper then, is it? This kind of science.
No, it's bigger. It's a testament to how interdisciplinary science is revolutionizing cold cases. Imagine applying this to, I don't know, centuries-old artifacts. Other historical mysteries where the timeline is fuzzy. It forces us to see environmental data not as just background noise, but as a living, breathing clock.
Okay, but hang on. Could the diatoms have just seeped into the money bundles while they were buried in the sand? Maybe the money got buried dry in November and the summer diatoms washed in later?
Excellent question, and the researchers absolutely addressed that potential counter theory. They ran experiments specifically to test that. And they showed that while some penetration is possible, it's really only for the smaller range of diatoms and only a limited distance in from the edge. We're talking millimeters, not deep into the stack. Crucially, they found no tied lines of diatoms on the Cooper bill's inner edges, which suggests the bills must have congealed into a solid lump relatively quickly after getting wet. That lump would have prevented significant infiltration after burial. Ruled out that passive, slow-seeping idea.
So the diatoms must have gotten on before burial.
That's what the evidence strongly indicates. The presence of larger planktonic diatoms, like one called Fragillaria, found interior to the stack, literally sandwiched between the bills.
Inside the bundle.
Inside the bundle. And Asterianella, which they found broken but clearly associated with the bill's surface, that indicates complete exposure to river water before it got buried. These weren't just clinging to the outside, they were deep within.
How they get deep inside.
Well, further experiments showed that a stack of bills, once it gets saturated, it doesn't stay a tight brick. It will fan out in water, exposing individual bills to the water. That allows diatoms floating in the river to settle on all the surfaces, even the inner ones.
Ah, okay, so it suggests the money was floating freely in the river for a while.
For some period, yes. Enough time for those summer diatoms to infiltrate the whole stack. It wasn't just superficial contamination, it was a thorough immersion before burial.
This finding, then, the summer diatoms, you said it's a paradigm shift. It rules out a majority of current theories.
It really does. It's a genuine game changer for the whole cold case. Forces everyone to completely rethink those long-held assumptions.
How so? What theories does it rule out?
Well, finding large diatoms between the bills pretty much rules out all theories involving human burial of dry bundles. So forget Cooper landing near the Columbia, bundling the cash, burying it dry. Forget someone else burying it dry later as a distraction. That doesn't fit.
Okay.
Even more specifically, finding summer diatoms rules out the theory that Cooper landed directly in the river in November, soaked the money right then, and then managed to crawl ashore and bury some of it. That timeline just doesn't align with the biological clock on the bills.
So if it wasn't November?
It means a summertime immersion and subsequent burial moves the money find completely away from the hijacking event in November. It disconnects the money being found from the act of hijacking in terms of time.
But it doesn't explain how it got there in the summer. Or who put it there.
No, it doesn't solve those mysteries. But it definitively tells us when that specific bundle was submerged. It gives us an undeniable date-stamped truth straight from the natural world. It peels back one layer of the mystery, only to replace it with a new, equally tantalizing one. What happened to that money between November and the following summer?
Okay, so the money tells this incredible story of summer immersion. But that wasn't the only clue Cooper left behind on that plane, right?
In seat 18E.
Not at all. Let's talk about the tie. His black clip-on necktie seems like such an ordinary thing. But decades later, it started whispering secrets, too. Maybe secrets just as profound as those diatoms.
Potentially, yes. For decades, it really was just a tie. Part of the evidence locker. We knew it was the kind sold exclusively at JCPenney department stores. And that specific style had actually been discontinued in 1968, so maybe a couple years old, but not necessarily unique. Seemed mundane.
But as we keep saying, every detail matters.
Especially in a cold case like this. And that unassuming tie went on quite a journey itself. From just being an artifact in a box to becoming a star piece of forensic evidence.
How'd that happen?
Well, for decades, it was largely underexamined with the technology they had back in the 70s. But then a dedicated group of citizen sleuths, they called themselves the Cooper Research Team, or CRT.
Citizen sleuths,
Yeah.
like regular people.
Yeah, but highly skilled people. Led by a paleontologist, actually, Tom Kay, they began this crucial reinvestigation back in March 2009. And they brought modern science to bear on this old mystery, technologies that just weren't available in 1971.
Turning a dead end into something new.
Exactly, a vibrant new avenue of inquiry.
So what did they do? What did this Cooper research team find on the tie?
This is where their meticulous work really shone. Using advanced tools like electron microscopy, X-ray spectroscopy, they basically scanned the tie at an incredible level of detail, and they revealed an astonishing nearly 100,000 particles embedded in the fabric.
100,000 on one tie.
Tiny microscopic particles, a whole world invisible to the naked eye. This included stuff like lycopodium spores, which are sometimes used in pharmaceuticals or even fireworks.
Okay.
But also, and this is the really fascinating part, a truly intriguing array of metals, things like unalloyed titanium, bismuth, antimony, cerium, strontium sulfide, and aluminum, and even specific titanium antimony alloys.
Whoa, that sounds
And
specific. Not just random dust.
not random at all. It was like a microscopic industrial fingerprint, an entire resume of environmental exposures just clinging to that cheap clip-on tie.
What's so significant about those specific metals, especially back in the 70s?
Okay, so back then, the use of pure titanium was extremely rare and
Yeah.
specialized. You didn't just encounter it anywhere. It was found primarily in places like aircraft fabrication facilities because of its strength-to-weight ratio, or maybe certain chemical companies dealing with corrosive stuff.
Aircraft fabrication, like Boeing.
Potentially, yes. And the presence of cerium and strontium sulfide was particularly telling. Cerium is a rare earth element, and it was known to be used by Boeing's supersonic transport, the SST development project, which was a big cutting-edge program right around that early 70s timeframe.
Okay, another Boeing link.
And strontium sulfide. That was used by factories in the Portland area near where Cooper boarded the flight that were manufacturing cathode ray tubes, old-style TV tubes. Companies like Teledyne and Tektronix.
So this unique metallic fingerprint, this specific mix of industrial trace elements, what does it suggest?
It strongly suggests Cooper may have worked for Boeing or another aeronautical engineering company at a chemical manufacturing plant or at a metal fabrication and production facility. It provides this tangible link to very specific industrial environments. It drastically narrows the potential occupational profile of our elusive hijacker from just some guy to potentially someone who worked in one of these specific fields.
Beyond the tie, though, there was other stuff left behind. You mentioned the hair, the cigarette butts.
Right. FBI agents recovered a single hair from Cooper's headrest in 18E, and those 8 Raleigh filter-tipped cigarette butts from the ashtray. Small items, seemed innocuous maybe, but in a cold case, huge potential, especially later with DNA technology coming along.
So what happened with those? Did they get DNA?
Well, this raises that important and often really frustrating point about evidence preservation in long cold cases. The FBI crime lab initially found no usable fingerprints on the cigarette butts, maybe because the filters are porous, maybe Cooper was careful.
Okay.
But then came the truly heartbreaking twist. In 1998, decades later, it was discovered that the butts had been destroyed years earlier while they were in custody.
Destroyed? Why?
Apparently without proper record or clear justification. It just happened. It highlights the challenges, the irreversible losses that can happen over decades in unresolved cases. In today's forensic world, those butts could have yielded invaluable DNA evidence, potentially identified Cooper, or at least definitively ruled out suspects.
Oh, man, that's a huge loss.
A huge what-if that just hangs over the case. Haunts investigators still, I'm sure.
So, okay, we have this new microscopic info from the tie, these specific industrial metals, this sort of tailor-made resume etched onto the fabric. How does that actually connect to the parade of suspects that have popped up over the years? Is it really enough to narrow things down, or just more complexity?
That's the crucial question, right? Is it a leap? But it's not really a leap if the analysis is rigorous, which the CRT's work certainly was. This new evidence has indeed refocused attention on specific profiles, even specific individuals.
Like who?
Well, for instance, a suspect named Sheridan Peterson. He was a technical editor at Boeing and actually worked near the SST research labs. Suddenly, he becomes a much more compelling person of interest after these findings, given his potential exposure to cerium and titanium.
Okay, that makes sense.
Similarly, another name that came up was Richard Lakich. He was a production supervisor at an electronics capacitor factory down in Nashville. He might have been exposed to similar materials, potentially explaining some of the other elements found on the tie.
So the tie evidence isn't just random, it provides actual leads.
Exactly. This metallic fingerprint offers a new, tangible lead. It shifts the speculation away from just motive or vague physical descriptions towards concrete occupational links. It significantly narrows the field of potential candidates. It gives investigators this new, scientifically robust lens to look at old suspects, maybe even find new ones, allows for actual evidence-based exclusions and inclusions that just weren't possible for decades before.
Okay, we have the money mystery, the tie clues, but the ultimate question, the one that's haunted everyone from day one, is Cooper's fate. Did he actually survive that jump?
The $1,000,000 question, or maybe the $200,000 question.
Right, what did the FBI think initially?
Initially, the FBI was pretty emphatic that he did not survive, and they had some compelling reasons. His apparent lack of skydiving experience, for one. The clear lack of proper equipment, jumping in loafers and a trench coat into a freezing storm isn't exactly standard procedure.
No kidding.
Then there was the brutal temperature and inclement weather that night. Rain, high winds, freezing cold at 10,000 feet, and finally, the terrain itself. That unforgiving, densely wooded terrain of the Pacific Northwest he supposedly jumped into. They painted a pretty grim picture for his survival odds. Almost impossible, they thought.
But that view changed, didn't it?
It did, fascinatingly enough. The lead case agent, Ralph Himmelsbach, who initially gave Cooper maybe a 50% chance of survival, which is already pretty generous.
Yeah, 50-50 seems high given the circumstances.
He later revised his assessment significantly upward. And the reason why is kind of astonishing. In the months right after Cooper's jump, there were an incredible 5 men who attempted copycat hijackings, using similar methods, demanding parachutes, jumping out.
5 copycats. Did they survive?
All 5 of them survived their parachute escapes, even under really challenging conditions themselves.
No way, all 5.
All 5. Guys like Frederick Kahneman, who jumped at night into a dense Honduran jungle, Richard LaPointe, who jumped into freezing January wind over northern Colorado. Their survival clearly demonstrated that it was possible, even under harsh nighttime conditions.
So the copycats proved it wasn't necessarily a death sentence.
Exactly. It forced a major reevaluation of Cooper's chances. It proved that while it was incredibly dangerous, highly risky, his escape wasn't automatically fatal. It pushed the FBI and everyone else to seriously consider the possibility that he might actually have walked away, that he might still be out there.
Wow. So despite the shifting theories, the new science, the passage of time, D.B. Cooper remains just completely elusive, a shadow figure.
Utterly elusive.
And his story has inspired this genuine cult following, hasn't it? It's seeped into pop culture everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. It's reflected in songs. You mentioned Todd Snider's D.B. Cooper, which is great. Episodes of TV shows like Prison Break wove his legend into their plot. There are movies, documentaries like The Mystery of D.B. Cooper.
And the merchandise, D.B. Cooper, where are you? T-shirts.
Countless books dissecting every theory, elaborate fan websites, and even those quirky Cooper Day celebrations they hold every November out in Ariel, Washington, near where they thought he jumped. The legend shows absolutely zero signs of fading away.
Why do you think that is? Why does this particular mystery endure with such intensity after 50 years?
I think it's that potent combination, isn't it?
Yeah.
A daring crime, but one that felt almost victimless. Beyond the initial fear for the crew and passengers, nobody was physically harmed. Then there's the clean, almost poetic escape, and the complete, total absence of the perpetrator ever since.
He vanished.
He vanished, leaving only these tantalizing clues and just endless speculation. For some people, he represents kind of an anti-establishment hero, maybe, a symbol of freedom or defiance against, an overly regulated world. He's kind of a blank canvas. We project our own desires for escape, for getting away with something audacious, onto him.
Mm.
And every new piece of evidence, whether it's the diatoms telling us about summer or the particles on the tie hinting at his job, it just further complicates the narrative, adds new layers, ensures the legend lives on, feeds our collective fascination with the unknown. It's a story that keeps evolving, keeps us captivated.
So regardless of whether Cooper survived or perished out there in the wilderness, his actions had undeniable, lasting consequences. They fundamentally reshaped air travel as we know it today.
Absolutely. The face of aviation security was changed forever by that one man's jump.
What were the main changes?
What's truly striking is how profound and immediate the legacy was. His hijacking directly prompted major sweeping upgrades to aviation security globally. This included installing metal detectors at airports that became standard procedure because of Cooper. Mandatory baggage inspection, pretty much unheard of before him. Extra scrutiny if you paid for your ticket with cash.
Right, all standard stuff now.
And crucially, the Boeing 727s themselves were quickly retrofitted with those devices called Cooper vanes, named after him. Aerodynamic plates that physically prevent the aft air stair from being lowered while the plane is in flight made that specific escape route impossible.
Ah, so they closed that loophole.
Closed it tight. And peepholes were mandated in cockpit doors, too, so crews could see who was outside. These comprehensive changes, they dramatically reduced hijacking incidents worldwide. Ultimately made air travel significantly safer for everyone.
So in a strange, ironic way, D.B. Cooper actually left a positive mark on aviation safety.
In a very strange, ironic way, yes. Even in his disappearance, he forced changes that benefited millions of travelers. An indelible, if unintentional, legacy. #outro day, Babby.
So after diving deep into all this, What does it all mean for the enduring legend of D.B. Cooper? We've journeyed through one of history's really great cold cases. From that incredibly daring jump on November 24th, 1971, into a pitch-black, stormy night,
Right back to the beginning.
all the way to microscopic diatoms telling us the surprising story of summer immersion for the recovered ransom cash. The industrial evidence on his tie hints at, a skilled professional, someone with specific expertise. While the money showing up at Tita Bar, especially combined with that diatom evidence, suggests a timeline totally removed from the hijacking itself.
Yeah.
The legend just continues to evolve with every new scientific insight, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of enduring mystery and also the tireless work of those citizen sleuths and forensic scientists.
And that scientific data, especially from the diatom analysis, it's undeniably clear. It gives us a concrete, biologically verified truth. That particular bundle of money spent time in the Columbia River during the late spring or early summer months, May, June, not the cold winter when the hijacking happened.
A critical piece of information.
Absolutely. It firmly establishes a timeline for the money that just unequivocally challenges most of the existing theories. It significantly redefines our understanding of at least that part of the case. It's a powerful example of how environmental forensics can unlock secrets decades later.
The D.B. Cooper case, even though the FBI officially closed their active investigation back in 2016, it really reminds us that every single detail, no matter how small it seems, truly matters.
And it really does.
In cold cases like this, even the most minute clue, a speck of metal on a tie, a microscopic algae on a dollar bill, it can unlock monumental truths, open up entirely new avenues.
Absolutely, and it encourages all of us, I think, to consider that possibility, that some small piece of information, maybe a forgotten memory someone has, an overlooked item tucked away somewhere, a seemingly insignificant tip, could still provide that missing link.
Yeah.
So many mysteries, even ones as big as this, they often get solved not by some grand gesture, but by the patient accumulation of tiny, precise observations. So if you, listening out there, have seen anything, heard anything, maybe know of evidence or have tips, no matter how small you think they are, you really should report them. There are still people actively investigating this, still questions just begging for answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And consider this final thought. If that money found at Tita Bar was truly submerged in the Columbia River during the summer, months after the hijacking, who was holding on to it all that time? From November 24th, 1971, through the winter into the spring.
Right, what happened in those intervening months?
And then, why and how did it end up in the river, specifically at Tita Bar, bearing that unique seasonal signature of those tiny diatoms? What untold story lies in that gap, in those missing summer months? A story still waiting to be discovered, maybe shifting our understanding of D.B. Cooper all over again.
The man who fell from the sky might be long gone.
But the threads of his mystery, they just keep unraveling, one microscopic clue at a time.